Vince McMahon lies called out. WWE Shoot on Fox. A WWE show cancelled forever. And more. I'm Ollie Davis, and this is the WrestleTalk News.
Support WrestleTalk!
Get exclusive videos over on our Patreon. I begin this episode with one of those rare headlines that, for anyone who's watched WWE over the last decade, makes perfect sense, despite how ridiculous it reads. Mr. McMahon docuseries interviews unable to be used because Vince sounds too much like a frog. This is apparently a shoot and not a rib. Vince's appearances over the last 10 years have become more and more indecipherable, presumably from shredding his vocal cords with the character's gravelly voice in the Attitude Era. As a result, he is often difficult to understand in the Netflix show, and it turns out that was the clearest of the audio, according to the behind-the-scenes team David Shoemaker and Bill Simmons. We had 4 hours of Vince's interview on the cutting room floor because he sounded like a frog one day. Apparently, the best thing that ended up on the cutting room floor was Vince recalling him promoting Evel Knievel's failed Snake River Canyon jump in the 70s, which Vince promoted. You can hear the full version of what happened by watching our Fall of the McMahons video, links in the video description below. In an interview with Kevin Iole, another one of the series producers, Matt Maxon, has discussed Vince's, let's say, liberal approach to the truth. There's a moment in the series that I don't think anybody else has caught on to as much. There's a moment where Vince says, there are times where what I say isn't necessarily what I mean. That was just such a fulfilling thing. He's like, I'm the chairman of the board, I'm not going to tell you the truth. We even set that up at the very beginning. He's not a reliable narrator. That moment, for me, is the most important part in the whole 6 hours. It's when Vince is defending him criticizing Ted Turner for taking all of his top stars in the 90s, when Vince had done just that same thing to the territories in the 80s. The director, Chris Smith, asks if that's hypocritical, and Vince eventually explains, what I say a lot of the time is totally different to what I think, and the public doesn't understand that sometimes. As a businessman, you have to throw things out there that's not really the way you feel, but it controls thought process by doing that. Maxon explains that Chris Smith peppers the series with spots doubting Vince's version of events, like Vince himself saying he won't tell us the real stories right in his very first interview. Vince, of course, disagrees with this. Or at least he says he does in order to control the public's thought process, and released a statement just before the show came out, saying it takes sound bites out of context and uses editing tricks to incorrectly confuse the boundaries between the character of Mr. McMahon and Vince himself. The best way to correct that? Make your own documentary! Apparently there was a rumour that former WWE head of production and pioneer of the Crash Zoom, Kevin Dunn, was producing a show for Vince that would act as a response to the Netflix documentary. PW Insider have set the record straight after speaking to sources close to Dunn. They were told he is not working on any McMahon-centric projects at all currently. But Janelle Grant, the woman who filed the sexual assault and trafficking lawsuit that led to Vince's resignation back in January, sure is. Grant's action against Vince is currently on legal pause while the US Department of Justice conducts their own investigation into McMahon. But the PR war continues, and following Netflix's docuseries going live, Grant's team have released their own statement claiming the show has only scratched the surface of McMahon's criminal and horrific behaviour and doesn't tell the full story of his abuse, sexual assault and human trafficking of Janelle Grant, including a list of stories from former WWE employees, pro wrestlers and reporters about McMahon and WWE's toxic culture throughout the years. Like joking about sexually trafficking his own daughter Stephanie on TV, former WWE wrestler Sable telling Jay Leno in 1999 that WWE made her do things she didn't want to do, Rita Chatterton's allegation against McMahon of rape, which has since been settled, current AEW wrestler Mercedes Moné saying she left WWE because she didn't like the way McMahon talked down to her, USA Today covering Vince wanting to do a storyline where he impregnated his own daughter, Bret Hart saying he thinks you'll find this kind of predatory behaviour everywhere in WWE. Kevin Owens describing the allegations against Vince as shameful. Ronda Rousey saying a male wrestler grabbed the drawstring of her pants. Ashley Massaro alleging WWE told her not to talk about being sexually assaulted during a show for the troops. Former wrestler Francine saying she was told to get Vince's attention by rubbing oil all over her boobs. Gail Kim recalling racism and microaggressions when working at WWE. And Nikki Bella saying Vince yelled at her and her sister Brie for winning the fan vote for Diva of the Year. On the 6th of September, after 5 years and $1 billion, WWE's incredibly lucrative TV rights deal with Fox came to an end. Like many other TV partners of WWE in the past, Fox reportedly felt shortchanged by what they had seemingly been promised heading in. The original conversations reportedly had the show using megastars like Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar, but when SmackDown started on Fox, they would barely feature. Fox also found themselves in the awkward position of having SmackDown on their station promoting WWE Premium Live events on the Peacock platform, one of their competitors. So WWE moved SmackDown to the USA Network on the 13th of September. Fox issued a press release that the Wrestling Observer describes as subtly knocking WWE by pointing out the football game that replaced SmackDown's usual slot on Friday the 20th did 81% better than the previous programming they had there last year, which was SmackDown. But WWE are beyond petty shots like that these days. Vince McMahon is gone. It's owned by TKO. They are a proper company now that doesn't need to get wrapped up in all the little details and arguments and pesky things like, oh yeah, but one more thing. The next week, the Wrestling Observer is reporting the usual source, the one that's suspiciously very pro-WWE, has been reporting the 27th episode of SmackDown actually beating Fox's football head-to-head, even though SmackDown is no longer on network. Slam! Take that, Fox, you losers! WWE are much better than... Oh yeah, just another one more thing. The actual ratings don't come out until Monday or Tuesday, so these figures must be based on the Fast Nationals, which are super early estimate viewing figures that can be wildly off, especially for live sports, which often don't include the end of the game or West Coast viewership. It's speculated WWE used these more favourable but probably not correct figures to boost their profile against Fox. In the end, Fox's deal with WWE turned out to be a money loser for them. While the ratings were strong and they had no trouble selling commercials in the time slots, they were paying so much to WWE they reportedly struggled to break even on the deal. A wrestling show could definitely work on Fox, just not for WWE's inflated price tag. Tony Khan has just entered the chat. There's been reports that AEW are in talks with Fox to put a new show there, which is speculated to be called Shockwave, as AEW recently filed to trademark that name. And now former AEW champion Swerve Strickland has dropped this bombshell in an interview with Queen's Flip. We're about to move. We're about to get on Fox. SmackDown is leaving Fox, and then we're taking Fox. TNT, TBS, and Fox, we got all three of them things. These several months are kind of WWE's own superstar shake-up with their own flagship shows. SmackDown has moved from Fox to USA, Raw will move to Netflix in January, and on Tuesday the 1st of October, NXT will seemingly become NXT 3.0 when it premieres on the CW network. WrestleVote has reported that NXT is set to get a significant overhaul in presentation, potentially even including a new colour scheme and logo. Corey Brennan of Fightful adds that after last Tuesday's episode, the final one on the USA network, the set was taken down, suggesting a new one will be debuted tomorrow. NXT head chef Shawn Michaels has teased that and more, first saying the presentation of the show will feature some cool bells and whistles. And when talking to Sports Illustrated, he teased new wrestlers could be getting added to the roster. And there are other big surprises coming down the pike. If you thought we were stacked before, you haven't seen anything yet. And that goes on both sides of the roster. Stephanie Vicure debuted in the final segment of the last USA episode, and the Motor City Machine Guns and former New Japan star Hikuleo, the real-life brother of Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, are reportedly signed with WWE and are expected to feature on NXT. And they'll hopefully also be able to say naughty words. Because the other major change is that NXT is expected to take on a TV-14 rating, as that's what it's being listed as on the CW schedule. All WWE programming has been TV PG since July 22nd, 2008. This might pave the way for Raw also becoming a more adult product when it moves to Netflix in 2025. But spare a thought for one WWE show that didn't make the cut in all this overhauling, as PW Insider is 99.9% sure that the bump is gone forever. Launching at the same time SmackDown premiered on Fox, The Bump has been running since October 2019 as a weekly hour-long talk show, which is streamed on the WWE Network and across WWE's YouTube channel and social media. It was mostly hosted by Kayla Braxton and Matt Camp, where they'd interview special guests in the studio or remotely. But in February, Camp was released. The Bump was supposed to go on a hiatus, but it hasn't come back, and its social media channels have gone dark. A brand new WrestleTalk original went live yesterday about the incredibly interesting case of the first time ever a wrestler was sent to prison for a wrestling move, and the ramifications that could have for the entire industry. Here's a clip. What happens when a professional wrestling match breaks down into a real act of violence? When a wrestler, in the heat of the moment or as a planned act of revenge, gives their opponent one of the industry's oldest, darkest secrets, known as the receipt. The unfortunate truth is nothing. It's an established practice in the industry. That is, until a landmark case in 2021 that changed British law and potentially the future of wrestling around the world. I'm Ollie Davis, and this is the story of when a wrestler was sent to prison for a wrestling move.